organization who's contributing to their pensions. They're paying their full 9%. However, the FAA is the only group who's getting cut in this budget. And so with the course of proportional share, we've come to the table, we've brought pension reform. However, the cuts are to only the FFA, and those in turn are direct cuts to the citizens. So with regards to the engine, we would like to see recurring revenue used to save that engine. To use the words that have been thrown around here lately, we don't want to kick the can down the road, but there are recurring revenues that we believe can be used to save that fire engine. You know, less is less. We're not going to get more with less. You're cutting service, and the citizens along Beach are going to receive less service. Within the budget, there is a identified model for the 1-in-1 program. That is 10 to 12 months out. That money could be used for the restoration of a fire engine. It could be used in splitting the light force. There are alternative ways of creative solutions in saving that fire engine, and I think they should be looked at. I believe the 1.9 million saves in the tire engine. However, I think there's creative ways to come up with solutions where we can make it a much less impact. But again, recurring revenue is the way to go about it. That way we are not coming back in FY14 with another $5 million cut. This year you're making a $4.8 million cut approximately. So we don't want to kick the can down the road. Also, within this policy of the 1-in-1, I think it'd be prudent for council to require either one, if you approve it, that prior to that being implemented, it comes back to this body. You are, in agreeing to this 1-in-1, agreeing to cut 3 ambulances from service in the city. There will be 3 less ambulances providing transport. Call volumes are not going down. If anything, it's going up. So I think you need to take a serious look. It hasn't been vetted, and there's not been much discussion on it. And then lastly, I guess the question I have also for Mr. Gross in talking about our funding here, I'm a little confused with regards as we're talking about one-time funds. Just want to make sure we're talking about correct numbers. Community budget book lists general fund to be 15.2% of total funds, which is $2.8 billion. That's $425 million, not 395. Within the presentation given at the community budget meetings, the presentation given to the community was general fund is 13% of 2.8 billion. That's it's 13%. That's a 2.4 difference. So I'd like an accounting for that money, if we could. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question? This is probably for management more than you, Rex, but maybe you could stay there. How many light forces are there? Is there only one now?
Chair, DeLong, committee members, Councilmember O'Donnell, we have 1 light force currently at Fire Station 17.
Got it. And with regard to the 1-in-1 model that we're looking to go to possibly, would that add ambulances? And when we say ambulances, do we mean paramedic? I thought this would add service. Can you walk me through that real quick?
The model that we're proposing is called the Rapid Medic Deployment Model. It would convert, we currently have 8 paramedic rescue ambulances. We would go from 8 paramedic rescue ambulances to 11 paramedic ambulances. We currently have 3 24-hour basic life support ambulances and 2 peak load staffed ambulances that we use during daylight hours. We would eliminate 2 of those peak load staffed ambulances. We would convert all of our ambulances to ALS capable ambulances, bringing the total to 11. So it's an increase of ALS capable ambulances by 3.
So, just so I'm clear, you'd be striking all those BLS ambulances that are loaded with 2 EMTs.
That's correct. Under the new system, every single patient would be treated by and transported by a paramedic to the hospital, regardless of the nature of their chief complaint.
Is that a good thing? Because then you're going to have paramedics, a full paramedic tied up with the patient, and I don't know, maybe they are now. I don't know if it's on a BLS run. Does they come to a house? It's you know, not a significant medical emergency, but they need to go to the hospital. Does the does the paramedic then travel in the ambulance, or is the EMT, that's the passenger in front, slide to the back and then the other EMT drive? How does that work?
Currently, are you talking about currently or?
Yeah,
what
just
we're proposing?
what's current practice?
Currently, what the practice is, if the call comes in that meets ALS criteria, you get the closest fire engine and the closest rescue ambulance. Upon assessment by the paramedics on scene, if they downgrade the call to a basic life support level call, does not require a paramedic, then we call for a basic life support ambulance. So we'll get a second ambulance on scene. The patient is then transferred to the EMT ambulance operators, and they go to the hospital with the EMTs. Under the new system, the first arriving ambulance that shows up will transport the patient regardless of whether it's an ALS or advanced life support level call or a basic life support call.
Got it.
Thank you, and I know we're almost out of time. We're going to take public comment, but I think Councilmember Lowenthal had a comment.
Just really briefly, and I think the chief may have covered this, in one of the community meetings that you spoke at, you had indicated how your expectation is with this new response model that it would actually improve time towards the patient response time.
That's correct. Currently our average response time citywide for first arriving fire engine on the scene is 6 minutes and 7 seconds. Our current average response time citywide for first assessment engine, paramedic capable engine, or paramedic rescue unit is 6 minutes and 27 seconds. By putting a paramedic on every fire engine in the city and increasing the number of ALS capable resources, we anticipate at least a 30-second decrease in overall response times for paramedic on scene.
Thank you, Chief. And so what I'm hearing from you in the various responses you've given is that the new model would better serve anyone in need of paramedic service. That's not only my interpretation, I think you've said that enough times throughout our budget meetings, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Dave Sterling with the IAM. As I've mentioned before, public safety as a whole takes more than just sworn staff responding for calls for service, and the civilian non-sworn staff of the police department are just as vital to providing that public safety big picture as the sworn staff, as they are a force multiplier when they're working. Their loss can be a detractor from force stability, from the information and the analysis of that information to normal business of desks in the police station, being that the substations have lost their normal desk service, and also in media relations and neighborhood watch. Those all serve as multipliers for the officers out on the streets, so they can focus on their primary job of delivering their service. Another aspect of public safety I think that goes unconsidered sometimes are the park rangers. With a shortage of police officers out on the street, it becomes more vital to keep them out on the street, and you leave parks open for a lot of other activities. Parks don't have a utopian crime barrier around them. When you apply osmotic pressure, you actually find that crime being more heavy on the streets tends to filter into the parks where there isn't as much of it, and you need people around with the appropriate authority and the appropriate means to deal with crime. But in terms of rangers, not only are they fully sworn, armed, and trained peace officers of the state of California with the same statutory authority as any police officer or sheriff's deputy, they're multidisciplinary. They provide customer service, they provide medical aid. Oftentimes they're the first on the scene of any kind of accident or medical emergency in our parks. They carry AEDs to be able to provide necessary care. They perform light maintenance to help keep those parks serviceable and enjoyable, and to further help visitors enjoy those parks and feel safe at the same time. So in times of rising crime, being able to use a multidisciplinary employee who earns half the paycheck of a police officer, I think is a quite effective bang for the buck. And to take those out of service and therefore increase the need for police officers in parks rather than out on the streets, I think is unconscionable and irresponsible. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question real quick? With regard to the park rangers, and I know you're very familiar with the park rangers, having been one for some time, their deployment model, it's Monday morning. What time do they come on? How many are on typically?
6:30 in the morning, and they stay right now until an hour after the regional park closes, which slides around depending on the time of year. So at their longest hours right now with current staffing, which has been drastically cut over the last few years, they're on from 6:30 in the morning till about 9 o'clock at night.
And how often do you guys use the non-career forces? Do they pretty much pick up the weekend work, or how does that all fall out?
There are currently no non-career park rangers. There are seasonal part-time, which are civil service classified.
Okay.
And they kind of fill in where there are openings, and when people call in sick, when there's vacation time. And then as other special events arise, some of them do get used through the city manager special events office to monitor film permits and Grand Prix and other similar issues.
Okay, so it's not like, hey, the full-time guys work Monday through Friday.
Actually, it's completely opposite. All the full-time staff work weekends and the weekdays. There's a 7-day-a-week deployment. There is no such thing as a quiet time in the park. The only quiet time is when there are people around to enforce it. There's, peace treaties don't exist without someone to enforce them.
Well said, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Very good, you addresses on file. Number of points overarching in the two specifics. First of all, to the extent that anything is funded through the oil revenues with a low range and a high range, I urge the council to embrace very hard and hug on to the lowest possible quote. The oil market has traditionally been too volatile. If halfway through the year the price does increase substantially, certainly make some adjustments, but hug tight that lower price. Also, as an overarching point, when you're developing this budget, I think you should take into consideration the fact that most people understand that our economy, both here in Long Beach and the country, will not begin to turn for about 18 months after Obama is out of office. You can make those adjustments. All
I
right?
disagree.
You may disagree. And giving credit where credit is due, I think we should, this city and the country indeed needs to give credit to Obama for demonstrating with absolute certainty that the white race, as it is, does not have a monopoly on turkeys.
So to the point,
Hey,
to the
okay,
point,
no.
to the point,
I'm getting to that, getting to that.
quicker.
That's your first strike in the First Amendment, sir.
Here we go.
No city employee should be laid off until we lay off the chief of staff of the mayor. Nothing personal, but that position,
We're not here, mister.
that position would, to fund that continually, would be unconscionable if, in the alternative, we were to cut back on public service, public safety employees, or even library employees. Period. That's my view on that. I think you should consider that very seriously. Also, I don't think we should lay off any city employee as long as we have on the payroll a city employee that has a police record involving substance abuse and abuse of weapons. Again, it would be unconscionable to lay off people that did not have that record and keep the offensive on the payroll. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Ann Cantrell. And on this oil price, the fact that we can't rely on $18 million coming in every year because the price of oil is volatile. What about the sales tax? It is not always the same amount that we get every year. Especially with the economy going down, we have less sales tax coming in. The same with the property tax. So we can't count on any of our revenue as far as I can see. But on to this. I picked this up today, and as I understand it, this is John Gross's recommendations, and yours differ from that.
Probably the city manager's recommendations.
So it says from John Gross. Oh, to the city manager from John Gross. Okay. And looking at this, it appears that this would restore all of the cuts that were originally made by the city manager. And as I understand it, you, Mr. DeLong, are making some changes in this. Most glaringly is the fact that you are only restoring 2 positions at the Nature Center instead of 3. And also, you have, I didn't hear you say anything about restoring the park rangers. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And as Mr. Sterling just told you, this is something that we desperately need, not only in El Dorado, but in every one of the parks for public safety. So I would urge you to add them back into your budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Good afternoon, Chair DeLong. My name is Linda Ivers. My address is on file with the clerk. I want to speak to the issue of the restoration of the public safety specialist positions. And if I heard your recommendation correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you were in line with the city manager's recommendation to move them to the Development Services Department. And if that's what I heard, and if that's what you're thinking, I would ask you to seriously please reconsider. The PSSs that I've worked with over the last 20 years in the community, and the last 8 years when I actually worked for a council member, serve a function more like your best field representatives, who actually represent the divisions they work for. They work with the community and multiple departments of the city. They do an investigative research function for the officers at the division, including the command staff at the division. And they need access that they cannot get to computer systems if they are in development services. We saw that happen when the nuisance abatement position was moved out of the police department a number of years ago. And it changed the quality and the job description of the nuisance abatement officer when they no longer had access. I would please ask you to talk with your HR staff to find out what the patrol division PSSs actually do. Because they have a job description or a job title that might also be found in an administrative function within the police department at some other level, it's not necessarily the same job, actual job description. Much like within the legislative department, your field staffs may be under administrative, they might be under legislative, but you know the type of work they do. The commanders at the divisional level, as well as the chief or chiefs, know what the divisional level PSSs do. And it's not the same thing as a crime analyst. That is a small function of their job.
Thank you for your comments. Let me just add, I share your concerns. My understanding, our understanding, that it'll be an equivalent job, equivalent skills, so we're development services. I did talk to Chief McDonald a few days ago about it. Would they have access to the same systems? And he said he felt it would be the same. But we'll follow up again. Thank you. Next,
But a
please.
point on that, Gary, I believe there's only, what are we proposing to fund? 3. There's now 24.
Correct.
And the proposal is to lay off 19 of them. And these are pretty, as you pointed out, important employees, efficient employees. And it gives me great concerns. You've heard me express them.
Next, please. And we're 15 minutes over, but
Thank you. I'm John Briscoe, elected and re-elected public school board trustee, not in Long Beach. I'm here today to talk about the Long Beach Fire Department, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I was hoping Chief Dury would still be up here, but he's not. The good. Long Beach Fire Department was one of the worst fire departments for their job under California state law to inspect public schools. The state law in California says that the local fire authority must inspect every building, every nook, every cranny, everything on every school, public school campus at least once a year for every code. The previous fire marshal, who retired rather suddenly after this whole debacle, had put in writing that their only job was to check a few fire hydrants, a few extinguisher tags, and then watch a fire drill and leave. The only agency, the only safety comes from the Long Beach Fire Department inspections of public schools at least once during the year. And the dereliction of duty caused me to call the state fire marshal in to investigate the Long Beach Fire Department, which they did. We got from the pits to the Ritz